A few years ago, The Atlantic magazine published a long feature article entitled "The Least Politically Prejudiced Place in America." The place in question was none other than Watertown, right here in the North Country. One thing it left out, though: Watertown is one of a handful of cities in the country that has a nonpartisan voting system. No parties, just names on a ballot. Does that work to reduce political divisions? We investigate on today's Story of the Day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Claxton Hepburn Medical Center, dedicated to providing patient care and regional services to the people of St. Lawrence County. ClaxtonHepburn.org.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Thursday, July 25th. First up, North Country Congresswoman Elise Stefanik is leading an effort against Vice President Kamala Harris. Stefanik is blaming Harris for her lack of oversight along the southern border. Emily Russell reports.
2 days after President Joe Biden dropped out of the election and endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris, North Country Congresswoman Elise Stefanik went on the attack. She led the effort to publish a resolution on Tuesday calling Harris out for her role on border issues. On Thursday, Stefanik spoke on the House floor.
This resolution condemns Kamala Harris's role as Joe Biden's open border czar and affirms that the American people deserve elected officials who understand the gravity of the crisis at the border and who will work to secure the border.
Biden tapped Harris to tackle border issues just a few months into his presidency. According to NBC News, Harris described her responsibilities as being focused on diplomacy and democracy rather than strict enforcement measures at the southern border. In recent years, immigration from some Central American countries has declined, though there's been an overall surge in migrant crossings since 2019. That surge began during Donald Trump's presidency. Still, Stefanik said on Thursday that it was Democrats who were to blame.
I have seen firsthand with the Border Patrol the disastrous consequences of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's administration's failed far-left open border agenda, which caused a historic surge in illegal crossings, the likes of which we have never seen on our northern border before, including individuals on the terrorist watch list.
The resolution was signed by every House Republican and 6 Democrats. It's not expected to be taken up by the democratically controlled Senate. Earlier this year, President Biden did try to pass a bipartisan border security bill. It would have sent billions to the southern border and allowed the Department of Homeland Security to shut the border down if daily migrant numbers exceeded a certain limit. Republicans ultimately pulled their support from the bill after criticism from former President Donald Trump. Instead, Biden signed an executive order last month which severely limits who can claim asylum in the U.S. Since then, DHS says arrests at the southern border are down by 40%. Emily Russell, North Country Public Radio.
When voters head to the polls, they often vote for candidates along party lines, whether they're Republicans, Democrats, or a third-party candidate. But in Watertown, people who run for office aren't listed alongside a political party. The city has had a nonpartisan political system for decades. Our NCPR intern Zach Jaworski looked into how it works and whether it makes sense for better politics. Here's that story.
It's a summer day in Watertown. Hundreds of people are crowding into the downtown public square for a citywide block party. There's music, food, and games lining both sides of the street, but most of the crowd is gathering in the same spot, near the dunk tank. Today, the mayor and city council members are taking turns over the water, fundraising for a local charity. Some are Republicans and some are Democrats, but none of them ran on party lines.
I don't think anybody's going to come up there and dunk me because I'm a Republican. I think they're going to come and dunk me because, it might be funny to see me get dunked, or they don't agree with decisions I made on city council.
That's Mayor Sarah Pierce. While people could dunk her for being a Republican, what they can't do is vote for her as a Republican.
We have a nonpartisan government, so people who run for office and hold seats on the city council, they aren't defined as Democrat, Republican, or any other party. It's a nonpartisan system.
If that type of election seems unusual to you, that's because it is. Besides Watertown, the State Board of Elections says the city of Sherrill in central New York is the only other place that does it. Ballots don't have an R or a D next to the candidates' names. Instead, they run for office as nothing other than themselves. But it wasn't always like that. Watertown was chartered in the early 1800s, but it's only been nonpartisan since the 1920s. The city newspaper, the Watertown Daily Times, pushed for the change, influenced by a nationwide anti-party progressive movement at the time. Jefferson County Republican Chair Don Kuhn says it was meant to protect the city from powerful political machines.
But I believe it was brought in to try to guard against the Tammany Hall type of influence that's gone on.
Tammany Hall was an influential New York City political machine in the 1900s. As a party, they controlled candidates, jobs, payroll, and more.
I mean, it wasn't a fair system at all. And so they tried to get away from that by not having partisan elections. You know, that system's been in place ever since.
Jacob Nyheisel, a political science professor at the University of Buffalo, says that nonpartisan elections are more common in the Midwest. He says they're meant to keep campaigns more focused on the issues.
Voters don't think about the partisan teams. They think about who's the best person for the job. That's the absolute ideal. That's what systems of nonpartisan elections are meant to try to bring to the fore.
But Nyheisel says that ideal often isn't reality.
Not many voters approach that ideal. The vast majority of the studies out there have actually suggested that there's probably more drawbacks than there are benefits, which is to say that people are not going to suddenly become super well-informed voters overnight.
Most people aren't able to know where a candidate stands on every issue. So when a party isn't available, Nyheisel says that voters often turn to other means of choosing. For example, where a candidate's name appears on the ballot, how pronounceable it is, and even how long it is.
So that's not picking the best person based off of what you've heard or seen or read. That's grasping at straws and coming up with some kind of way to make a decision, even if it might be less than ideal.
Whether Watertown is the exception depends on who you ask.
Yeah, I really believe in the nonpartisan nature of our politics here in Watertown.
That's Cody Horbaz, who previously served on the city council and ran for mayor. He says the system in Watertown guides people to vote based on local issues, rather than just voting for the candidate that aligns with their own political party.
John Doe, what was John Doe's issues? What did he stand for sidewalks, or was he against sidewalks?
But not everyone in Watertown thinks that parties are sidelined.
Hey, Cliff.
Hey, Zach, how are you doing?
Good, nice to meet you.
Good to see you.
City Councilor Cliff Olney says he has his doubts.
It's a nonpartisan race in name only.
He says that parties still find a way to influence the elections.
Oh, there's money involved, yeah. And carrying the petitions of the people that they think would be best candidate for the needs of the party.
Olney also says that partisans rally behind specific candidates in private.
The party should not be involved in the candidacy and the campaigning for an individual. They should stay the hell out of it.
Back at the dunk tank, a familiar face is warming up to throw softballs. Horbaz, who spent his time on city council as a registered Democrat, is here to try and dunk Mayor Pierce, a Republican. He misses, and the two share a laugh.
Oh, all in good fun. We were colleagues on the Watertown City Council, and I think we worked well together. And she looks warm, so I think she needs to cool off.
So it's bigger than politics.
It's much bigger than politics.
Watertown's next mayoral election isn't until 2027, but 2 city council seats are up in 2025. The intent of Watertown's nonpartisan system is that these races would be about which candidate is going to fix that pothole on Main Street or who's going to replace the swing set at the park, not the party that the candidates belong to. But politics are still there, seen or not. For North Country Public Radio, I'm Zach Jaworski in Watertown.
We have more news all the time on our website, ncpr.org. Music today by Lost in Beijing of Keene and Daniel Kelly and Gretchen Kohler of Potsdam. I'm David Sommerstein, North Country Public Radio.